Test for the sound is done. And now we can begin. What a start time to have set for the stream. 20 past 2 and Ineos blow this race apart. And all of a sudden, green jersey Jonathan Milan is behind. What is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing? 93.1 kilometers of the stage to go on the stream that I'm watching. And the peloton are only 33 seconds behind because the race has been blown apart. The Ineos Grenadiers have manoeuvred themselves to the front, started attacking, and then a more important move has gone, including the likes of Ivan Romeo. Quinn Simmons is following it for Lidl-Trek, or was following it, should I say. But this has quartered the gap to our leading four in the breakaway, who are Vincenzo Albanese of EF Education Easy Post, Quentin Pache of Groupama FDJ, Matteo Bergado of Total Energy, and Jonas Abrahamsson, already a stage winner at this tour, of Uno X Mobility. It's been a real snoozer of a first 60 kilometres, but it's finally burst into life again. Thanks to Ineos. I can't believe I'm saying that. As a certified Ineos hater. No, I don't mind them. But there are better teams on the in the peloton. Either way, Jonathan Milan was dropped on this Category 4 climb, which I think shows you the pressure that the green jersey is under at the moment. He did take maximum points, taking 5th place in the intermediate sprint from the peloton. But he is in trouble. He's recovering it at the moment. But right now, he needs to do something very quickly to make sure he's back in the peloton going down the descent. He's only got one teammate with him, Jonathan Milan. And Tim Merlier is also behind. So, an update on the riders who have been dropped. Van Wilder and Schachmann are dropping back because Tim Merlier is behind. And other riders that are off the back, Geraint Thomas, Sam Watson, setting this one up for Ineos Grenadiers, Dillier, Bauhaus, Meyerhofer, and the group including the green jersey, which includes plenty of sprinters. Arnaud Demar, Dylan Groenewegen, Jonathan Milan, Alexis Renard of Cofidis. Other riders involved, Pascal Ackermann, admittedly not going for the sprint on today's stage. Instead, that is Jake Stewart. And Jonathan Milan in the green jersey is there. And then 2 riders right at the back of the race, Connor Swift of Ineos Grenadiers and Louis Barret of Intermarche Wanty, who was caught up in a crash just before the intermediate sprint at Roche-Saint-Besson, which was won, incidentally, by Jonas Abrahamsson, who sprinted all out for it. Bergado tried to go past the Uno X-Man, but with 50 metres to go, saw his effort be futile, so conceded victory to Abrahamsson. Albanese finished 3rd, Pache in 4th, with Milan, Girmay and Turgis the only other 3 riders to get involved. Tadej Pogacar did not take a single point, so advantage Jonathan Milan at the intermediate sprint, but right now they're in trouble. And by they, I mean Lidl-Trek, because their big sprinter is off the back. But that is the race situation as of now. Quick one to report you up to date with. There's been one withdrawal before the stage started today. Tobias Harlid Johannesson was in a little bit of trouble after yesterday's stage, but in the end, it is another 3-barreled name. 3-barreled name? No. Danny Van Poppel, who will leave the tour, who left the tour before the start of today's stage. after the birth of his daughter. So a new addition to the Van Poppel family. So quite a legitimate reason for him to leave the race, to go and care for Stefan and their daughter, their newborn daughter Bobby. So that is the update for the race in terms of abandons. Van Poppel, the only one, and the only crash was a fall for Louis Barret. But as of now, he is all right and trying to make his way back to the peloton. A peloton which is 29 seconds behind this breakaway. And 1 minute clear of Jonathan Milan. The problem though now is you're on a descent and then it's a long flat section before the next category 4 climb. So despite Milan being dropped, despite Milan getting dropped, it's probably a good sign for Lidl-Trek that no breakaway, quote unquote, no chase group has formed off of the front of the peloton. Because then the race would become uncontrollable. Right now it's still within range for Jonathan Milan. But it's only Thibaut Nace that's attempting to solve the puzzle at the moment. But Milan, in the green jersey, right now, is in a race against time to get to the front of the peloton. And it's a peloton that I think is being led by Intermarche Wanty. So that must mean Biniam Girmay is still in there. Despite Louis Barret being off the back, Intermarche Wanty insisting on pacing, and it's probably a good idea for them, because suddenly this stage is swinging into their hands, and more teams will get involved with the two big sprinters off the back. Currently at the rear of the peloton for Visma Lease-A-Bike is Matteo Jorgensen. Right at the back of the peloton going down this descent. Alongside him for Israel Premier Tech, or just in front should I say, is Chris Nylands, who might prove useful in the lead out for now Jake Stewart, with Pascal Ackermann being dropped. But the decision amongst Israel Premier Tech's staff is that Jake Stewart will be the sprinter no matter what. And thanks to a handy graphic from ASO, Biniam Girmay, Jordi Meus, Kane Groves and Arnaud Delis have found themselves in Group 2. Meanwhile, Merlier, Milan, Groenewegen and De Maar are behind in Group 3 as Matteo Trentin attempts a breakaway from the peloton. Quinn Simmons is following, but he's dragged a massive group with him. Mauro Schmid in the wheel of the American national champion, EF, with riders up there as well. Wout van Aert trying to get in the move. Tom Schoens there for Lidl-Trek. So Lidl attempting to have two riders track this particular move. Intermarche Wanty also there. Thanks for that, Star. Not really sure how to respond to that, but love you too, I guess. How have you been? I have not been very active on Discord, to be honest with you, so how are you finding the race so far? I have kept up to date with your is it Vila Manager team? Although you haven't updated that or given us an update on that for a while. But the peloton is very much stretched out. Tadej Pogacar sat about 30th wheel as more attacks go. Nelson Oliveira this time with Tom Struins following in the wheel, trying to mark this Movistar move. Picnic Postenel also getting involved, and Struins directing the camera motorbike away from Oliveira. And the camera motorbike insists doing so. And Oliveira looks over his shoulder, assesses the damage, sees that there is none after Quinn Simmons pulls it back. But more and more riders getting involved, and I think suddenly Intermarche Wanty want to stop these breakaways from happening. Roel van Sint Maartensdijk now following Julien Alaphilippe, who is attempting a move for Tudor Pro Cycling off the front. But because Biniam Girmay is in this group, suddenly Intermarche Wanty will be using up their teammates to not have a move. And off go Movistar again. Movistar and Ineos Grenadiers. It's not on a mountain, it's on a flat stage, but it's like watching the Tour de France from 5 to 10 years ago again. Not even 5 years ago. It's like watching the Tour de France from 10 years ago again. But in the end, this move is being chased down by EF Education Easy Post. Lidl-Trek monitoring moves constantly still. And that is the benefit of monitoring the moves, because Quinn Simmons, a rider of his quality, if he gets up the road, will just have a free ride to the line and should take the win from the breakaway. .2 kilometers to go though. 33 seconds separate the peloton and the breakaway as Alpecin-de-Koning head to the front. Putting a rider up there, the look behind told me that that was an attempt at an acceleration of some kind, whether that's a pace increase or a breakaway, I don't know. Getting frantic on the radio now between the Alpecin-de-Koning team. But they've got Caden Groves in this peloton. So a big chance for Groves if he's available to sprint and Merlier and Milan aren't. But if I'm Alpecin, I'm trying to strike a deal with Intermarche to put their resources to the front and pace together to try and hold off Milan. It'll be a tough task for 80 kilometers, but you need as many teams as possible to get involved. Just over a minute now to the green jersey, which is around 30 seconds behind the peloton. And looking at the riders that are there, if Delia is there, Lotto should be putting riders forward to pace. But as of now, they are yet to do so. Red Bull Bora could do the same with Jordi Meeus in the group. But as of now, they are not bothering, which could mean the end for those sprinters if Milan and Merlier can make it back to the group. Anyway, let's wrap up how things went yesterday, because it was a big day for Soudal Quickstep in particular. And the result was a huge one for them. I have just realised I haven't put this in my stream for now, so I'm just going to have to do some live adding of bits and pieces. But it will take maximum sort of 10 seconds-ish to get it together. Either way, I don't even know where I put it now. The result for today, or yesterday's stage, should I say, finishing atop Mont Ventoux, let's make that smaller, was Valence and Paris-Pantra taking the win. There we go. Bit of graphic design from me there. Valence and Paris-Pantra took the win. 4 seconds clear of Santiago Buitrago, but he beat Ben Healy in the sprint up the nasty final rise to the summit of Mont Ventoux to have a French winner on the Tour de France for another year. But home victor at the Tour, and it's Paris-Pantra that delivers it. Ben Healy was second on the same time, Buitrago third, but would Paris-Pantra have won it if it wasn't for Ilan van Wilder coming from the wilderness to pace on the front, set Paris-Pantra up, and deliver the victory for Soudal Quick-Step. Massive ride from Ilan van Wilder on yesterday's stage. Tadej Pogacar claimed 5th place after everything that Jonas Vingegaard threw at him. The Dane loses 2 seconds in the end to Pogacar, but had Pogacar on the ropes at points during the stage. Enric Mas was 7th, the last rider within a minute of Paris-Pantra, with Alaphilippe in 8th for Tudor at 1 minute 17. Roglic and Lipovic crossed the line together, Roglic waiting up for his teammate. The Slovenian finishing 9th for Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe. Lipovic in 10th, 2 seconds behind Roglic, who was at 1:51 on the day. And that was how the stage ended up. So for Quick-Step, it was a humongous victory. And Ilan van Wilder spoke after the stage, saying that he spoke with Valentin Paris-Pantra at the bottom of Mont Ventoux and asked how he was feeling. He said he didn't feel his legs. I told him I could feel mine, so I'd do the work for him. I came back in the last kilometre. There was some headwind. It was difficult for Valentin because he was going for the stage win. The yellow jersey group was coming back. I went full gas, and luckily he won. And for Valentin Paris-Pantra, he was very appreciative. It's hard to say how I won that stage. We went to Mont Ventoux with this breakaway, and I was thinking maybe I could win today. I may be the best climber in this breakaway. I asked my teammates Pascal Aencorn and Ilan van Wilder to make a good pace at the bottom. I tried so many times to drop Ben Healy, but he was really strong. At the end, I was just thinking, I'll wait for the sprint and we'll see if I can win. And then I won. These last few days, we went through a little storm, I guess, and now the sun shines again. I can say it's really amazing for me and for the team to win a 4th stage in this tour. Tomorrow is a sprint, we hope, so maybe we can win again. And it's a big win as well for the staff members. Jürgen Fort of Soudal Quick-Step saying Soudal Quick-Step specialised and the other sponsors, their interests are big. France is an important market for them, and we are really happy to have the French guys in the team. They are successful in the team in the past, but also now with Paul Magnier and Valentin Paris-Pantra, who are 2 young French talents. They've both delivered already this year. And it's true, they do have plenty of French talent in that team. Or a couple of talented French riders. The 24-year-old Paris-Pantra, of course, taking the victory up Mont Ventoux. And a totally different style of rider in Paul Magnier, who won sprints at big races already this season as well. The group, including the sprinters, has made it back to the pelotons. So, in the end, the moves did not cause as much damage as they hoped to have caused. It's even going so slow now that Louis Barret and Connor Swift, who were right at the back, have returned to the peloton, which isn't too far behind the 4 riders in the lead of the race, as Quinn Simmons and Jasper Stuyven have a chat at the back of the peloton about how they're feeling. But Shooter Pro Cycling are ripping things apart on the front again. And it was Simmons and Stuyven that brought Milan back in the main. Louis Barry has now been dropped again off the rear of the peloton, fighting to stay in contact as Tudor Pro Cycling lift the tempo. Is part of the convoy and is sitting on the Arkea B&B Hotels team car, so a little favour being done by his former team there. And we'll see if the Frenchman can make it back. Vincenzo Albanese on the front. Hands over to Matteo Bergerdo. Abrahamsen, the big rangy figure of the Norwegian. Much larger than the rest of his breakaway counterparts. Will take over from Bergerdo with Quentin Paché. Capable puncher, as is Vincenzo Albanese. Albanese perhaps quicker in a flat sprint. But who can trust anyone in a flat sprint when Jonas Abrahamsen's there? Interesting move going off the front right now. Merlier with a quick step teammate. I think it's just a pace which has, from Encorn, which has been slightly too quick for the peloton and caught them out. In the end, it's quite easily shut down, but Pascal Encorn, with Tim Merlier on his wheel, is attempting something here. Jonas Vingegaard as well towards the front. Very odd composition of riders at the head of the peloton currently. But the time gap is gradually going out once more. Tom Schroen's taking bottles from the Lidl-Trek car. After doing a lot of work monitoring attacks with his teammate Quinn Simmons. But through comes Barry with his grey left-hand side of his jersey, which was white at the start of the day, but because of his fall has gone a slightly darker shade. Also at the back, Sylvain Dillier there for Alpecin-Deceuninck. Will probably be after nourishment from the team car after his efforts to try and keep the Milan group away, which actually weren't too heavy. But right now it's Pascal Encorn that's pressing on, gets on the radio for Soudal Quickstep. And Quinn Simmons is moving up on the left-hand side. So Simmons going back to his monitoring duties of the breakaway. There was a point where he was going so quickly that Pascal Encorn, the man at the front, told him to slow down to allow a larger gap between peloton and breakaway to avoid people bridging. But we've slightly seen this sort of emergence of, I'll call it pollet pacing, where you go at a consistent tempo for the whole day, and it means that the gap goes out very slowly but very gradually, rather than the peloton slamming on the brakes. Garcia Piernet riding, I think, either stuck in gear or with a puncture. I think the latter, so we'll need assistance from the Arkea B&B Hotels team car. Mark Cavendish speaking to ITV Sport right now on the stream that I'm watching. Of course, the last rider to have won in Valence back in 2021. In the green jersey for Soudal Quickstep. Or Deceuninck Quickstep as they were then. .71 kilometres to go though. 48 seconds separate the peloton and the breakaway. And expect that gap to rise unless any breakaway teams want a word in how the stage ends up going. And it'll be a good opportunity for Albanese, Paché, Bergerdo and Abrahamsen to increase their stay at the head of the race. But as of now, it is once again calm throughout the race. 2 hours into this stage then, around 45 kilometers an hour average speed so far. Cavendish right now talking up the Tour de France as a race. Of course, an ambassador for the race, but there is some belief that it's given him the career that he's had, and without the Tour de France, Cavendish might be have a lot lower of a reputation, because the Tour de France is just a different level to any other race. Tim Wellens right now with the UAE Team Emirtes team car, grabbing a water. Big sticky bottle there, as Anthony Turgis as well is looking for similar treatment from the Total Energy car. Total Energy without their sprinter, Emilien Jonier, of course, who crashed early on the third stage. Or sorry, not early. Early in the race on the third stage, but late in the stage itself. But as of now, Total Energy are looking at a secondary sprinter. They've got Bergerdo in the breakaway, so it won't be him at the end of the day. Thomas Gachinard has struggled and was the last rider to cross the line at the end of yesterday's stage at Mont Ventoux. Food poisoning was what he was struggling with in particular, finishing 165th. Soudal Quickstep Team Radio at the moment says, very strong guys, very strong. Stroins is also waiting for the moment. Alpecin is pulling. And I think very strong was said by Tim Merlier. Max Schachmann is at the front right now, followed by Quinn Simmons. Jonathan Milan chatting away. But Tim Merlier on the wheel of Geraint Thomas in a replay right now, getting back into the peloton. He is more than safe at the moment, tucked away. The peloton under the duress of Max Schachmann's pace. But is Anthony Turgis up for sprinting for Total Energies? It won't be Jegat because he's got GC ambitions. Delettre is a climber. Bergerdo's in the break. Gachinard is struggling. So it'll be Turgis or Verchet as of now. And I don't think Verchet is as good of a sprinter as Anthony Turgis is. Admittedly, it's that neither of them are going to trouble the stage win, especially with Jonathan Milan and Tim Merlier there. But both French teams, or two French teams in this race, have sprinter difficulties because Cofidis as well are facing their first sprint stage without Brian Coquard. So murmurings of whether Alexis Renan or Damien Touze will sprint for them, both of which have had a chance earlier at this tour. Thanks to Brian Coquard either not being there in the final or being involved in a crash earlier in the stage. Renard was the latest pick for them. But I have a minor feeling that Damien Touze might have a chance, because he is in my ones to watch for today. Here were the ones from stage 15. We missed stage 16 stream because I was away doing life things. So on stage 15, of course, that stage was won by Tim Wellens from the breakaway. So I thought I'd pick 3 riders that were going to get into the early break before the stream got underway. And in the end, I got all 3 correct. Matej Mohoric was the closest to victory, you could argue, being in the winning breakaway that included Tim Wellens, Victor Campenaerts, Quinn Simmons, etc. But he was dropped early on the last climb, so Mohoric did not have it. Meanwhile, Neilson Powless almost made it across In the end, his counterpart Warren Barguil did. Paulus didn't and was reeled in by the rest of the breakaway group. And from that rest of the breakaway group, Wout van Aert was partaking in the sprint, won by Julian Alaphilippe, but the poor Frenchman thought he'd won the stage. So I am very happy with that. I will take 3 for 3 on that ones to watch. Didn't get the stage winner, of course, in Tim Wellens, but I don't think many people would have on stage 15. And here's who I've gone with to watch today. It's going to be a sprint, especially with the way the peloton have acted early in the race and the current situation as it is now. Jonathan Milan is not my first pick. Tim Merlier is who I've got to win this stage for Soudal Quickstep. Keep an eye on Milan, obviously, for the green jersey. And I am keeping my eye on Damien Touze because I reckon he'll be sprinting for Cofidis. It's going to be him or Alexis Renard, but I have put all of my chips in Damien Touze's, or all of my eggs, should I say, in Damien Touze's basket. And that's who I think is going to be sprinting for Cofidis in place of the broken finger of Brian Coquart that forced him out of the race after the time trial. For some reason did that time trial with the broken finger, but then decided it was not okay to continue. But either way, that is who I've got as my ones to watch for today. And here's the profile in a bit more detail. It is the flattest of the final stages. Just 2 category 4s on the menu. The Col de Pertuis, which is where the gaps were trying to be forced, 3.7 kilometers, 6.6%. And the next climb is a lot easier on the gradient, 3.6 kilometers, so slightly less in distance as well, but much lower gradient, 3.5% average. Up the Tartagouille. And then once you're down that, you have got around sort of 35 kilometers remaining in the day to make sure that your team is ready for Valence. It's going to be a big day for the final couple of lead-out riders, because what I've got in my pre-stage notes of today's stage is 2 Cat 4 climbs, of course, well before the line, and it being a flat stage, but there is a corner late on. So your 2 best lead-out guys have to be on form. And in the case of Alpecin de Koning, they won't have 2 of their main 3 for the sprints. It's just Caden Graves left now with Van der Poel and Philipsen out of the race. Initially, I had Philipsen before the Tour for this stage. But with the way it's going, I have gone for Tim Merlier instead. So that's what I'm going for. And I think a sprint is the correct bet. I was wondering whether it would be a breakaway stage, because the peloton would have been tired after the Mont Ventoux climb. And I was wondering whether some of the smaller teams, the likes of Astana, the likes of Cofidis, etc., would throw riders in the breakaway and throw everything they've got, making a small group go to the win. Because they cannot compete with the 2 big sprinters at the race. So I thought it was another chance for the breakaway, but seemingly it's not going to be the case, so I'm glad I stuck with my pick for the sprinters. Either way, we are well over 95 kilometers into the stage now. Well over halfway. And we've got 62.4 remaining. 1 minute and 6 is the advantage for the breakaway. And it's Thibaut Nice for Lidl-Trek on the front at the moment. Van Aert just pulls out of the pace line. And we'll request something from the Visma Lease-A-Bike team car. But no, the rider up the first was up the Col de Pertuis. I haven't even mentioned that earlier today. Was Jonas Abrahamsen yet again. a rider who has been consistently involved in the intermediate competitions, picking up plenty of prize money for Uno X Mobility, but I think nothing will pick up more prize money than the stage win he got earlier in this race. But as of now, the situation remains stable. 1 minute and 6 between the peloton and the breakaway, as Wout van Aert has a mechanical trouble. Bit of trouble as well for the helicopter camera there. But no, 4-rider breakaway and 4 riders who are pretty good on different terrain necessarily to this. We'll start off with Vincenzo Albanese of EF Education Easy Post, who has been involved in a couple of sprints for the team in pink, finished in the top 10 of stage 8 in particular, just separating Alberto Dainese and Stian Fredheim, so is in the mix of the miscellaneous sprinters at this Tour de France, but hasn't got a big result at this race. Did get a big result at the Tour de Suisse, however, his previous race, beating Fabio Christen to the win of stage 2. Admittedly, that was a much more hilly stage than this one. Into the Schwarzy, a couple of category 3s and a category 2 on that particular stage. So Albanese prefers it when the road goes uphill and is short and steep in its climbs. Was in the top 10 as well of a Paris-Nice sprint stage earlier this year, and 8th on the Omloop Nieuwsblad. So a good rider when it comes to classics, and that is proven by some of his best results. Second in the Tour des Alpes-Maritimes in 2024, only behind Benoit Cosnefroy overall, and the 2023 Coppa Bernocchi, he was second there, as well as the Memorial Pantani in 2021. But I think his Tour de Suisse stage win that he got this year is probably his biggest achievement in his career. And he will remember riding this tour and being involved in this breakaway, I'm sure. But Albanese, formerly of Arkea B&B Hotels, and then before that he was with Eolo-Kometa, only spent 1 season with Arkea after a couple of years at Eolo-Kometa, getting some good results in the Italian classics, and has moved himself up to EF Education Easy Post. The definition of an all-rounder is Vincenzo Albanese. Wout van Aert trying to get back to the peloton at the moment. He's distanced by about 22 seconds as of now. But Quinn Simmons having a long diatribe on the radio with his team car. Meanwhile, Thibaut Nace is stuffing a gel down his throat. But as of now, Lidl-Trek and Soudal Quickstep going to the front is a statement of intent by both teams that will put off and ward off any other breakaway attacks. Because there's lots of riders forming towards the front in red, yellow and blue, white and red. Another rider in blue, white and red is in this breakaway, Quentin Perchier, who is driving things on the front right now, hands over to Jonas Abrahamsen. And a lot more riders have been opting for the nose tape across this tour. That seems to be something that's growing in popularity. Has no scientific advantage from what I've read. But Matthias Skjelmos has been using it. The media have seen him use it. Lidl-Trek have then started picking it up. And for some reason, every team now is getting involved. The leading quartet continue though. And because it's dangling at a minute, Team Car Watch will be prevalent on this particular stage. Because they'll be able to get everything that they want on command if their team car is up there. So as long as the gap is over a minute, then they have access to their team car. And Abrahamsen, perhaps earning himself some brownie points being in this breakaway for the overall Super Combativity Award. It's going to be between him and Ben Healy. There's no beating around the bush there. Both of which have walked away with a stage win from a breakaway. So they're level in that regard. But as of now, Abrahamsen will just continue for as long as he possibly can at the front to rack up those kilometres in a breakaway. Thibaut Naisto on the front for Lidl-Trek was probably hoping for a lot more entering this Tour de France, was the Belgian, than just being involved in Jonathan Milan's sprint train, but things have not worked out at all for the 22-year-old, who has had good results in the classics in the early part of this season, off the back of a successful cyclocross winter. Entered the GP Miguel Indurain, his first road race of the year, and won that ahead of Alex Molinari. Then went to Itzulia Basque Country and had multiple top 20 finishes on the tough stages, before a 12th place in Amstel Gold Race, an 8th in La Flèche Wallonne, and 5th in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, just being out-sprinted by Simone Velasco that day, ahead of 3 separate riders who came in solo. Pogacar first, of course, on Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Then second in the GP Canton Aargau in Switzerland, just behind Nielsen Paulus, who managed to get a gap on Thibaut Naisto before the line. But the Tour de France has not been fruitful for Naisto. A Belgian youngster who has a lot ahead of him, and I think is just struggling ever so slightly in his first ever Grand Tour. Albanese doing slightly less on the front than his 3 counterparts in the breakaway. But at the end of the day, I think it's not going to matter because this group is not making it to the line. "55 kilometres to go though, and this stage is going by very nicely indeed, very quickly, which I'm glad about. And that's another advert for the morning breakaway. It makes these quote-unquote more dull transition stages go by a little bit quicker. Round a 180-degree turn come the peloton led by Lidl-Trek, who are just controlling this for Jonathan Milan at the moment in the green jersey. And the giant Cyclops has positioned himself at this particular corner on today's stage. In and around the route all the time is that figure. Anyway, we move on to a little bit more discussion from yesterday, I think, because it's clearly calmed down a bit after the flurry of attacks over the first climb of the day. So let's get discussing what happened on Mont Ventoux, starting with Ben Healy, who was the unlucky loser of yesterday's stage, finishing second. Great result for him, though, moves himself up to 9th in the general classification. And the EF rider said this: "I think I can play for GC and the stage win with such big time gaps. I wanted to follow the moves and not be attacking, and if a big group went, then I was always ready for that. Then I could play the card for both. I think Mont Ventoux is definitely a climb of 2 halves. The steep bit is to Chalet Renard, and then it was a lot more shallow with a headwind. That played a massive part in this final, and unfortunately I wasn't able to distance the other guys on the last half of this climb. Maybe I should have judged my effort a bit differently. I had super legs today. I didn't have the chance to look at the GC results after the stage, so that will be a nice surprise when I open up the results later. I'm in pretty good shape this tour, and the plan was to go up Wanty as fast as possible. That's what I did today, and when the temperature is a bit colder, maybe I can have better legs. We started off pretty strong and kept up a good tempo. It was hard to find some coordination in the group, and I said to the guys, let's just catch Enric Mas first, and then we can play. That's what we did. On the top bit, it's really flatter with a headwind. It was definitely harder to try and distance each other, but we played until the line, and that was that. I went to the right in the final, and I wanted to try and get the jump on Valentin Paripantra before that. That's what I managed to do, but the last 100 metres is pretty long. He had the better legs in that final kick to beat me to the line. It's a tricky one, because with the headwind, the top section and the flat, you never know. It's such a long effort. I wanted to pace myself, but I should have pushed more on the steep bit and tried to make the difference there. I didn't do that, and Valentin was able to beat me in the kick to the line. I think I need to pick the hard days. There are the days that suit me the best, and I think there are still 3 or 4 of those stages this week. So Healy is not ruling out going in the breakaway again in these final couple of stages. He is after those breakaway kilometres and perhaps to rise in the general classification. Whether stages or GC position is more important for him, it's his decision, I suppose. But one rider who is very much interested in the general classification of his teammate, admittedly, was Adam Yates, who said about yesterday's stage, it's always a big mess. I think after a rest day, everyone's a bit fresh, everyone wants to try and win, so it was hard to control at the beginning. We thought we had a good break, I think it was only 3 guys at one point, but then the peloton had other ideas. Luckily, we had Marc Soler and Pavel Sivakov up there, so it was all under control. I was still there with only 6 or 7 guys. Visma had Sepkus there. I don't think we were really under pressure in that regard. When the leaders attack, it's hard to follow, but the pace eased off. I was ready to work, so it was under control. Tadej Pogacar looked good and feels good. You know how he is. He wants to win every stage, be it a sprint, a mountain day, or a TT. That's his character, that's his personality, and that's what we work towards. We worked hard all year to try and win, so it didn't work out today, but tomorrow is a sprint day. After that, we've got 2 more big days in the mountains, and we will certainly give it a try. So that was Adam Yates' thoughts, and there was a brief incident after the final climb where Jonas Vingegaard got caught up in a crash with a photographer. Jonas said, some photographer ran out in front of me straight after the finish line. I don't know what he was doing. I went down. I think people in the finish should use their eyes a bit more. I was feeling very good today, so I'm happy with the feeling and with the attacks I tried to do. Of course, I didn't gain any time today, but I took a lot of motivation. We wanted to have somebody in the break, and the team did amazing. Everybody worked with everything they had, so it was a real commitment from everyone, and that was great. Thank you to my teammates. Tadej Pogacar followed me every time I attacked and followed him, and I followed him when he attacked, so I don't know if I could see any weaknesses from him today. At least how good I felt today gives me some motivation. I will keep trying. And we will get to later, his team will keep trying as well. But I've covered an ad break with all of that nonsense, so back we go to the race. 1 minute 10 between the peloton and the head of the race right now. But Jonathan Milan at the moment still leads the way in the green jersey. And questions are being asked about whether Tadej Pogacar can take it. I've always felt as if Pogacar had it in his hands, but the more this race is going on, the more it's swinging the way of the Italian on Lidl-Trek. The stage result will be massive though for Jonathan Milan, because he has already picked up 11 points at the intermediate sprint. 50 points for the stage win would be exactly what the doctor ordered for Milan, because I think that will pull him away enough from Tadej Pogacar that Pogacar will take no interest in the green jersey. But we've got a crash in the peloton. Rodriguez is down. Somebody made a sign for Nils Pollitt there, but Kort Nielsen as well is caught up in that incident. I hope to see it at some point. It must have happened in the mid-pack because there's been no camera shot of it right now, but it looks like a fairly large multi-rider pile-up. And there we are. Julian Alaphilippe is on the deck. And I think he's not interested in the hand offered out. Looked pretty furious at the peace offering offered out by Thomas Gachinard, who he himself has struggled at this tour. Carlos Rodriguez and Geraint Thomas are involved, as is the rider from Groupama FDJ, Paul Penouet. So Groupama FDJ Sprinter is off the back right now and will latch on to Geraint Thomas and Carlos Rodriguez. Groupama FDJ will send a rider back. Magnus Kort Nielsen was also caught up in that incident. But Rodriguez, with a ripped jersey, clearly shows that the peloton were going at pace when the crash happened. A replay of it, and that was a weird incident for Julian Alaphilippe. It looked like the Arkea BNB Hotels rider in front was trying to take evasive action, and Gachinard didn't get on the brakes in time, which was why he was trying to apologise to Alaphilippe, who was not interested in his advances. But plenty of nervousness in the peloton, as proven by that incident. Alaphilippe on the rear wheel of Magnus Kort, who is getting back to the peloton, using the UNO-X team car as a wind buffer. But usually one crash creates panic in the bunch, which causes another. And it's this vicious cycle that sort of forms, especially on a day like this, which is thoroughly controllable, and with a breakaway that should be brought back and a sprint incoming into Valence. Mathis Louvel has a rear wheel issue, so Israel Premier Tech are going to have to deal with that. So Louvel struggling with a mechanical. Perhaps caused by that crash, because we've seen Louvel towards the back at multiple occasions in the peloton across this Tour de France. But Penouet and Carlos Rodriguez are back. Sam Watson will be tasked with taking the Spaniard further up the peloton, getting involved towards the front, away from all the incidents. The crash happened towards the back of the peloton, on a segment where nothing was really going on. But Louvel struggling with his rear wheel. I think it's a puncture. It's been slightly dropped off the rear of the peloton. But the two riders that are fully dropped are Julian Alaphilippe and Magnus Kort. Alaphilippe again involved in a crash, though. You've got a feel for him. But the signs are out for Alaphilippe, who will shortly pass them. As of now, it's the breakaway going past, who have a minute and 15 advantage on the peloton and a minute and 40 on the group of Alaphilippe, which isn't a group, it's a duo, but Well, I suppose that counts. "47 kilometres remain in the day, and it will soon start getting frantic in the peloton. We've got one more climb to traverse. It's given a 4th category label, and quite rightly so. 3.6 kilometres, 3.5% average gradient. Up to 406 metres of altitude, the Col de Tadej. And beginning the climb is Quentin Paget. The Frenchman, 2 French riders in this breakaway, 1 Italian and 1 Norwegian. From 4 different teams, Julien Alaphilippe wants something from the Tudor Pro Cycling team car, which is trying to manoeuvre its way past Visma Lease-A-Bike, who will be caught up soon behind Mathis Louvel's stricken bike. Total Energy are also having a bit of bike issues at the moment. As Alaphilippe goes past his supporters group, positioned at the bottom of this climb. Taking a couple of bottles from the Tudor Pro Cycling car, and he will move on and try and get back to the peloton before it gets serious. Michael Woods towards the front for Israel Premier Tech, not really sure why. His days will come later in the mountains. But as of now, Schachmann leads the peloton on to the final climb of the day. Louis Barret is going to be happy that for once on this stage he's missed a crash. He's towards the rear of the peloton though, sat with Lucas Plapp. Also towards the back is Michael Storer, again, another rider who won't really be interested in the results today and instead will be focused on what happens slightly later in this Tour de France. Alaphilippe manoeuvring his way through the convoy to get back to the peloton. And a slightly longer effort than he would have hoped, but the former world champion is safe as Mike Woods continues to try and formulate a chase. Not really sure what the Canadian's doing for Israel Premier Tech at the moment. Jake Stewart is going to be their man. I wonder whether they're increasing the tempo on the higher percentage sections to put a little bit of lactic acid in the legs of Milan and Merlier. But right now, Israel Premier Tech are just sprinting, or, just helping out the sprinters. Woods peels off at the head of the peloton, and it is now Quinn Simmons who takes things up in the American National Champions jersey. As Wout van Aert is manoeuvring his way up the right-hand side, is he preparing for an attack over this climb? Indeed so. Wout van Aert makes a move to try and bridge across the 57-second gap to the breakaway, and will alarm bells ring for Lidl-Trek. Simmons looks behind, gets the nod from Jonathan Milan, and starts to increase the tempo in the peloton, but he is not catching Wout van Aert, who is attempting a bold move with 45 kilometres remaining. The breakaway have just over 1.5 kilometres left of this false flat section. Probably not even calling it a climb at this rate. But Wout van Aert is flying across the gap. And as of now, Israel Premier Tech are trying to close this down. They have seen Van Aert go up the road and they are worried. Van Aert perhaps texting the legs for the mountain stages. But off goes the Belgian in search of a stage win. Van Aert's such a prolific winner at the Tour de France. Can do it on any stage. Taken 9 wins across his Tour de France career. But his last one came in 2022. So has been winless for the last 3 years at the Great Race. Admittedly, 2023 was a DNF for him, but he went the whole of 2024 without winning either, and this is his big chance at hitting out for victory, it seems. Another opportunity at being in the breakaway later in this Tour de France, on stage, I believe, 20, after La Plagne, a rolly breakaway stage that might suit Wout van Aert, and so will, actually, the revised Paris stage. But Van Aert testing the legs early. At the moment, it looks like it's not going to be a chasse patate because Albanese, Pache, Bergerdo and Abrahamsen are only 24 seconds ahead of Van Aert at the moment, who is wanting to absolutely empty the tank by the time he reaches the top of the climb. We'll see if there is any interest in taking the solitary point, and more importantly for the breakaway, the prize money at the top of the climb, because that will cause an increase in pace, and the increase in pace is coming from Vincenzo Albanese. I think they are all worried that if they get Wout van Aert in their group, they have no chance at all of winning. But at the end of the day, Albanese is seemingly just concerned with the solo chase. Intriguing manoeuvre though from Van Aert, not set up by anybody at Visma, solely off his own ideas. But Van Aert now is in what looks to be a chasse patate, because the rest of the breakaway do not want him there. And the peloton are chasing him down. Quinn Simmons is doing that at the moment. But Simmons might just see himself washed very shortly, as Soudal Quickstep are manoeuvring themselves over the 4th category climb for Tim Merlier, and the battle will ensue for the descent. Won by Lidl-Trek, Quinn Simmons on the front at the moment. But Van Aert right now is not making any more inroads on the breakaway, which have decided to work together for the common goal of keeping the Belgian behind. Lewis Askey having a little bit of bike trouble and requiring some assistance from the Groupama FDJ car, as 55 seconds is the gap between the peloton and the head of the race, while Van Aert sits between the two groups at 22 seconds down, with just over 41 kilometres remaining in the race. And the peloton wanting to bring Van Aert back, but this looks forevermore like it's going to be a move that is unsuccessful from Van Aert. Let's just wrap up everything from yesterday then, and then we can move on to what the rest of the race can hold. But first of all, I want to speak about Tobias Harlan Johannesson, who had a real hard time going over the line. Torushoft explained it after the stage for UnoX. Tobias Harlan Johannesson feels much better after the stage. It was dramatic seeing him laying down after the finish line with some stomach pain, but luckily he feels better. He'll go to the hospital for a checkup. It was our team doctor's advice. That's the best thing to do as a result. The most important thing is that Tobias is doing better and well. The most important thing, of course, is the health of the rider. If there's issues, then we'll listen to that, but we know later. It's incredible. We've done a good Tour de France as a team. We've been there on every stage. It's also nice to be there on GC for the first time with a Norwegian rider. for many, many years, so that's new for us, but that's where we would like to be in the future as well. First, I would like to see Tobias get well and be 100% healthy. His GC placing, 6th, 7th, 8th or 10th, it doesn't matter to me. It's about the rider and the athlete. Now we're 8th, it's a great result at the moment. And Tobias Harlan Johannesson did start after exiting hospital, had spent the night with his brother, Anders Harlan Johannesson, at the hotel, and did start today, and hasn't looked in trouble. I've not seen him towards the back on this stage, and I didn't see him get caught up in that crash, so looks like Tobias Harlan Johannesson is doing all right for now. Elsewhere, more team directors have had their say on the previous stage, one of which, Mauro Gianetti, who said the pressure from Visma Lease-A-Bike was expected for us. They advised everybody in the press conference that they were going to attack on this stage, so we expected it, and they did very well. Jonas Vingegaard is a real fighter, and we know his quality. Today he did an incredible stage with 3 or 4 strong attacks. Tadej Pogacar was good, he could follow all the attacks. At the end, he could take another 2 seconds. In terms of us, it was a very good day, and we maintained the gap in the GC. Vingegaard, he's a champion. These guys are incredible. They are creating an incredible show for everybody in these past few years. We know when Jonas is in good shape, like he is now, the difference between him and Tadej is small. For Tadej, he needs to suffer to stay in the wheel. That's normal, but it's good to see Jonas is in good shape, and this promises a lot of fight in the next stages. So that's what Mauro Gianetti had to say of UAE Team Emirtes. But a director sportif that you could argue is overperforming with his GC leader at the moment is Matt Winston of Team Picnic PostNL, who said, I think the team really brought Oscar Onley into a good position at the foot of Mont Ventoux and looked after him all day. They kept him calm and kept him cool and hydrated. On the climb, I think we can be really satisfied with what we saw from Oscar today. We didn't expect a GC place when we came into the tour, so we're just taking it day by day. Oscar is 22, we've had a great Tour de France, whatever happens, and potentially he could still have a bad day. We don't know, so we're just going to keep taking it little by little. We hope we can defend what we've got, but we also know how good Primož Roglič can be on the last week of a Grand Tour. He's proven that in the past. Oscar Onley is fatigued as he should be going into week 3 of a Grand Tour. No one should be feeling fresh though, as that's how a Grand Tour goes. And Oscar is certainly feeling that a little. It's no more though than any other rider, and he can keep recovering well. We focus on that as a team and making sure that he has the best recovery from the moment the stage finishes. We do that with good nutrition and looking after him in the correct way. Then he can keep fighting. Tomorrow potentially could be a sprint. It's the last real chance for the sprinters. Obviously there is Paris, but that's going to be a different dynamic this year. So I see it going to a bunch sprint tomorrow. And, as of now, Matt Winston is absolutely correct. Wout van Aert's trying to have a say in whether it goes to a bunch sprint or a breakaway, but the Visma Lease-A-Bike rider is not benefiting as of now. His attack over the top of the final climb is proving futile, and the gap is 40 seconds between him and the breakaway quartet up front. Van Aert was involved in the early breakaway formation. There was a massive group that went off the front that I'm surprised didn't kick on, because it did not include Jonathan Milan or Tim Merlier. It included a couple of teammates of both of them. But they could have put themselves in a position at least to win the stage, whereas right now it looks dead set for Tim Merlier or Jonathan Milan to clean up in a sprint. Van Aert, though, 45 seconds now behind the breakaway, who have 36 kilometres remaining in this stage. And the humidity is rising, and the clouds are getting greyer as we approach Valence, because it's been raining in Valence at the start of the stage, as we're about to get some radio from Tudor Pro Cycling, who said now it started raining at 10 kilometres to go. 10 kilometers to go. It started raining now. So that's going to mean a nervous peloton entering the final 10 kilometers. Water on the road, higher crash risk, should I say? That's a tough one to get you turned around. But if you're in the breakaway at the moment, you're only focusing on your race and making sure you get into those frantic corners with a lead and away from the chaos. And at the moment, the chaos is being provided by Wout van Aert, and the breakaway, should I say, is doing their job in keeping clear of the chaos. Over a speed bump, and now begins the slick, wet to dry corners for the peloton, and more importantly the breakaway, who are traversing that just now. Soon it will be Wout van Aert on his own, who goes around these corners. And Van Aert resigns, looks behind. He had that 25 to 30 second time gap where I thought that he could make it across, but Albanese had the call through, as did the rest of the breakaway riders, that Wout van Aert was going across, and they reacted by increasing the pace at the front of the race. 34 kilometers to go. Van Aert has 10 seconds on the peloton, who will head to the 90-degree right-hander very shortly. Van Aert will head into that at the front of the peloton, as Quinn Simmons will just be behind Van Aert. And the peloton will bunch going around this corner and will be strung out on the exit. So this could be a chance for Lidl-Trek to put the rest of the peloton under pressure. And any sprinters who are situated towards the rear of the peloton now need to get their foot down. Tadej Pogacar especially is towards the back of this group and trying to get across as Quinn Simmons looks to rip this race apart. It's a very important right-hander, and Wout van Aert is looking around for his teammate Jonas Vingegaard, who is stuck with Tadej Pogacar. But as of now, Lidl-Trek could go and rip this race apart if they really want to. They're in a position where they can. Good corner from Quinn Simmons, not so good from the riders behind him. And it will get slower and slower with more and more riders going wide. Nobody hitting the deck yet, which is a positive sign. And it's these wet to dry corners that are most difficult to traverse, because road surface is difficult to tell. Of course, on an incredibly wet road, you know to take extra caution going around the corner. And on an incredibly dry road, you know you can rail it as fast as you possibly could. Whereas on a wet dry situation, you might misjudge a corner as being dry, and actually the grip is just not there, and it washes you out, and that's your race over. So they're so difficult to judge, but right now Lidl-Trek are judging it perfectly at the front of the peloton at that important point, and now the pace goes out of the front of the peloton, and the peloton starts to widen rather than thin out, approaching a roundabout. But 1 minute and 4 seconds separates the peloton from the breakaway, slightly gone to the advantage of the peloton through the twisty section, but might extend once again, as Matej Mohoric wants some assistance from the Bahrain Victorious team car. .3 kilometers remain. 1 minute and 6 between the peloton and the leading 4. And we've discussed Albanese. but we haven't discussed any of the other 3 riders that are in this breakaway, and we might as well do that while they are still there. They are certainly going to be reeled in, but we should give them their flowers at least while they have the ability to accept them. Quentin Paché has done the Giro this year, so is fresh into his 2nd Grand Tour of the year. Best result at the Giro of 7th place on stage 5, the sprint stage to Maetra, won by Mads Pedersen. But it was a tricky finale, which helps Quentin Paché. And Paché, a rider who advanced to Groupama FDJ in 2022 after spending his whole career below the World Tour level, moving from B&B Hotels for the 2022 season and has stayed with Groupama FDJ since. And he has done very well for himself indeed. 2nd on 2 stages at the Vuelta a España, one of which came in 2024 on stage 10, which is another hilly stage. Lost out on that occasion to Wout van Aert by 3 seconds. And then his 2nd result at the Vuelta a España came 1 stage before he DNF'd on stage 17, where he was outsprinted by Rigoberto Urán. And that was up a climb of 9.3 kilometres at 4.9% average gradient, but with a distinctive flat section in the middle. So he is a rider that thrives when the road goes uphill, and he is a very high quality puncher and medium mountain rider, and a good domestique for Groupama FDJ to have. But today he is in the breakaway. So that is what Paché brings to the table. Mathieu Bergadeau, very similar. French, loves a short, steep climb, spent a lot of his career at pro team level, and is still there with TotalEnergies at the moment, perhaps seeing a future though with the merger between TotalEnergies and Ineos. So far this Tour de France, his best result has been 8th place on the breakaway stage into Toulouse. Of course, stage 11 that day was won by Jonas Abrahamsen, so he's used to being in the breakaway with the Norwegian. But Mathieu Bergadeau's best result came at Paris-Nice last year when he won a stage. Was it last year? Might have been the year before. I'm racking my brain now. I'm going to Google this. 2 seconds. I'm sticking on this screen. I'm grabbing my phone as we speak and making sure that I am correct. He definitely won a stage at Paris-Nice. I don't remember what year. He did win a stage at Paris-Nice in 2022, outsprinting Mads Pedersen and Wout van Aert, or holding them off, should I say, from the breakaway. And I think that's the best result of Mathieu Bergadeau's career. Has had other good result in classic races. 2nd at the Britannia Classic behind Valentin Madouas. 2nd at the Tour de Doubs in 2022. But is a very offensive rider, likes to enjoy being on the front foot, and is in his 5th Tour de France this year. Has done 2020, 2022, 2023 and 2024 before this. Questions about whether Lenny Martinez has mechanical or not. Seemingly not. But Jonas Abrahamsen is a guy who might just ride the chain off if you're given the opportunity. A complete truck on the flat stages, and it proved to be beneficial for him on stage 11, going and winning the stage into Toulouse ahead of Mauro Schmid in a 2-man sprint, and was the strongest from that breakaway. TotalEnergies about to get on the radio as the weather gets much worse. They say, "Come on, Mathieu, keep believing. The rain is an opportunity for us." An opportunity for Mathieu Bergadeau and a worry for Matej Mohoric, who almost cannoned into the back of the UAE Team Emirtes team car, which pressed their brakes. But Lotto and Picnic Postinel now getting involved, sending a couple of riders to the front of the peloton. But no, Jonas Abrahamsen, stage winner at the Tour de France, and that instantly trumps any other result that he achieved in his whole career, realistically. Went into the Tour de France wanting to be a stage winner, ended up being a stage winner, and now really has nothing to lose for the rest of his tour. Also won the Brussels Classic in 2024 on his own, ahead of Biniam Girmay, Caden Groves and Pascal Ackermann, holding them off by just 4 seconds in that particular race. And 2024 was a good year for him, as well as the Brussels Cycling Classic win. Second in Dwars-door-Vlaanderen, another Belgian cobbly flat classic. In that case, he was behind Matteo Jorgensen on that day and won the sprint for second in a 4-man chase group. But does have a kick on him when necessary. Just about beat out Mauro Schmid in the sprint. But Jonas Abrahamsen, the 29-year-old, is an elite rider at what he does. And is one of the most entertaining riders to watch because he is so active in breakaways and gets involved so often at the front end of the race. .6 kilometres to go. And Soudal Quickstep monitoring the front of the peloton. Now, before this gets extremely hectic, the rain is going to make this more and more hectic, as is the road furniture that persistently comes up to the peloton. Let's have a brief look at what people are predicting for the coming stages especially. We will start off with Christoph Rudolph of Alpecin de Koenig, who said, "It's not easy for us. We lost our 2 leaders actually, so it's not easy to adapt. Luckily we had a good start to the tour, but it's complicated. We count on Jonas Ricard to bring Caden Groves in at the right moments in the best possible situation and position. We'll try to have somebody who has the potential to win in the breakaway. Even if it's a small chance, a lot of teams are tired. There's a chance that a breakaway with Wout van Aert would go to the finish. The parkour is not hard today, but the bunch is tired. When they want to go for it, they don't need a hill to go all out to the finish. So for me, it's possible that a breakaway could happen and go to the finish. Groves is ready, but there is only one potential winner. It will not be easy, but if it was me, I would not go with Tim Merlier and Jonathan Milan to the finish." And I think that's the case for most sprinters in the race at the moment. But it's something that all of those will now have to deal with, because it is looking more and more likely that it will be a bunch sprint on the road. Lidl-Trek controlling things at the moment. Tadej Pogacar going the wrong way around that roundabout and losing a couple of positions in the peloton, but Quinn Simmons is increasing the tempo at the front of the peloton. As the rain starts to worsen, Andreas Leknesund clinging on to the back of the peloton that is led by Quinn Simmons, who is going all out right now. Also towards the back, Michael Storer, we've seen him there before. Storer and Leknesund will be wanting to be in the breakaways in the future stages. Capable climbers on their day. Mohoric is back in the peloton right now, so crisis averted for the Slovenian. Almost ended up in the boots of the UAE Team Emirtes car. But this is why Quinn Simmons was pacing, because they are into a village and a couple of turns and road narrowings, which can mean Lidl-Trek can put the hammer down in the peloton and string things out. Quinn Simmons is doing just that right now, as Mohoric makes his return and connects with the rear of the peloton. On to Leknesund he goes then, but the increase in tempo from Quinn Simmons has meant that the breakaways gap has pretty much halved in the last couple of kilometres. 34 seconds for our leading quartet. And team cars will be being pulled now out and away from that 4 up front. 23 kilometres to go, 35 seconds between the peloton and the breakaway. So don't trust that first cycling time gap, I'll tell you that. Around 30 seconds at this point. But these guys will be wanting to steer clear of the peloton for as long as possible because chaos will start to ensue. The rain will cause nervousness, and nervousness usually leads to crashes, which is not what Vincenzo Albanese, Pache, Bergerdo, Abrahamsen, or anyone in particular wants to be involved in. More and more motorbikes are being pulled from the gap, and that is a bad sign and a disheartening sign for the breakaway, which will not give up and which will keep riding on for as long as they possibly can. Shooter Pro Cycling on the radio, saying, with one of their riders saying, "Have you got any news from the finish roundabouts in the last corner?" And the team car says, "I have news now. Ricardo is arriving. The last corner to the left is narrow." Talk with Matteo, because Matteo before the start looked at the video of the last kilometres. So that's Matteo Trentin, their road captain, who has clearly studied this finish. So Alberto Dainese will be interested in following the wheel of his Italian counterpart in the team. It should be Trentin leading out Meyerhofer, leading out Alberto Dainese, if I'm guessing the sprint train formation. Unless Marco Haller and Trentin swap their roles. Leinhard will be tasked with positioning that train, you'd expect. But Tudor, with all of their riders still in the race, they have done a good job at keeping illness away from their riders. But as of now, Luke Plapp and Roel van Sint Maartensdijk are heading off the rear of the peloton. That's one teammate for Biniam Girmay that he won't have. And another one, Louis Barret. I don't think he would have had Barret to use from throughout most of this stage, because Barret was involved in a solo crash, unrelated to the one that took down Alaphilippe and Carlos Rodriguez. But 20 kilometres remain now for the breakaway group. Quentin Pache, mouth wide open, dropping in as much air that he possibly can. And it's going to be much more difficult now riding through these wet conditions. It's going to take more mental reserves to be used up, keeping yourself on the bike. And both bits of rubber on the tarmac. But Jonas Abrahamsen looks in control of his efforts right now. Unlike Quentin Pache, the exact opposite of the Frenchman. Abrahamsen looks very much steady on the bike. Very enjoyable watch, Jonas Abrahamsen, when he is in this kind of form. But the peloton have 20 kilometres remaining in the day. It is going to be a bunch sprint. You expect, unless Jonas Abrahamsen pulls something off that almost nobody has ever done. The Tour de France flies past a local runner who is just enjoying a little jog down the side of the road. Leknesund and Stora still towards the back of the peloton, which is still being strung out through these corners. This time it's Soudal Quickstep that lead the way, Lotto have sent a rider forward, as have Red Bull, Bora Hansgrohe, by the looks of things. Jordi Meus trying to formulate his team in the middle of the peloton. But as of now, it is Pascal Inchhorn that leads the way. Sepulveda sat second, with Tom Stroins in third in the train, Jasper Stuyven fourth, and then the green jersey of Jonathan Milan sat fifth wheel. Sepulveda being used because he's a climber, so it's a chance for the peloton to, or the breakaway shall I say, to increase their gap. If only briefly, because I'm sure the Argentinian will be washed over by the other sprint riders that will be positioning their sprinter entering the final, where there will be some key corners. The left-hand turn, of course, that Tudor were talking about. So it's important to have your last three riders be in prime position through that left-hander. And if they are, then you've got a serious chance at the stage win. Pascal Inchhorn, though, on the front for the moment for Soudal Quick-Step, with 17 kilometres remaining. And off the back right now, just after getting back on to the peloton, Mohoric towards the back, but Fred Wright is dangling as well. Inchhorn, though, hands over again to Sepulveda. And Vincenzo Albanese gets his head down and starts to focus on increasing the time gap if he can. Flick of the elbow, hands over to Quentin Paché, who looks in a bit more discomfort. Both of the French riders look like they're digging deeper into the reserves than Albanese and Abrahamsen. Abrahamsen, though, at the front right now. We've got a couple more quotes to get through, but I won't do that until after the stage finishes, because they're kind of more about the mountain stages, and we'll have a brief chat about the stages coming up and what we thought about today's stage, which could get very entertaining towards the end, especially with the road surface as it is now. A little bit greasy, and a lot of teams looking to get their sprinters involved. Similar to Formula 1, wet roads is a little bit of a leveller for the teams with lesser sprinters to try and poke themselves into places where they really shouldn't be and benefit from the general discomfort amongst all riders and the worry in the peloton. Almost 46 kilometers an hour on average, as Albanese hands over to Paché, who gets out of the saddle, and he looks very much like he's struggling, Quentin Paché. And it might be soon that Abrahamsen and Albanese decide to leave their breakaway counterparts. Paché definitely looks like he's suffering the worst of the four, but we've seen on Vuelta stages him out of the saddle, rocking, rolling, and looking like he was in trouble, and in the end, holding his effort. So perhaps this is typical Paché. Clinging onto the rear wheel of Vincenzo Albanese for now, though, as Jonas Abrahamsen continues to raise the pace at the front of the race. The longer they stay out the front, the further away they are from the chaos that is the peloton, who now will be after the bunch sprint, where the quickest riders will be towards the 4. Those that are not at the front at the moment include a couple of lead-out riders and a couple of mountain riders in particular. Tadej Pogacar has done his job for Lidl-Trek. He is towards the back. Somebody who hasn't done their job today, but is perhaps saving the legs for future stages, is Harold Tejada of Astana, who is also right at the rear of the peloton. Ivan Romeo had an attempt early on to get into the breakaway. Instead, his Movistar team will be, you'd think, going for Ivan Garcia Cortina in the sprint. But Romeo is towards the back of the peloton at the moment, so seemingly won't be getting involved in the lead out there. Would be a key rider if they did form a train with the likes of Barthe, Oliveira and Romeo doing the lead out for Ivan Garcia Cortina to sprint. But that doesn't look like the case at the moment, and it feels like Garcia Cortina might be surfing the wheels to go for his own opportunity. Best result so far of 12th on stage 1 of the race for Garcia Cortina, so has not been around the sprints at all really. The Spanish rider on the Spanish team of Movistar. But Abrahamsen continues to push at the front of the race. Mathieu Bergadeau grits his teeth to stay on the wheels. Arnaud Delis tucked away quite nicely for Lotto at the moment. Banking on no crash. With the wide roads, that might be beneficial. But Jonathan Milan is also nicely tucked in. Further towards the front though, as is Tadej Pogacar, who moves up on the wheel of his UAE Team Emirtes XRG teammate. But the GC teams, especially with this rain, will be looking to position their leaders away from the chaos, so will in turn be involved in the chase of the breakaway, almost accidentally. Albanese, though, in his first Tour de France, is trying to get as aero as he possibly can, getting as little wind on him as possible, and will be relying on Abrahamsen and perhaps Pache to get involved in a fuga de la fuga, if you will, breakaway from the breakaway. Round the roundabout they go, and Vincenzo Albanese leads the breakaway group through. A little bit of a gap forms between Albanese and Quentin Pache. The Italian rider does not look over his shoulder though and assess the damage, so just continues. More and more riders though are being spat out towards the rear, having done their job at the front, as Jonas Abrahamsen increases the tempo very much with an attack, followed at the moment by Mathieu Bergadeau, who is trying hard to reel the Norwegian in out of the saddle, and really struggling and starting to tie up is Mathieu Bergadeau. So Albanese now has the Frenchman to get across to. Meanwhile, Jonas Abrahamsen is striking out on his own, hopefully, in his case. Albanese riding across to Bergadeau, who is very much done. And instead of pushing past, Albanese sits on, assesses the gap between himself and the peloton, realises he's dropped both Pache and Bergadeau, and tries to pursue Abrahamsen. If I'm Abrahamsen, I'd try and wait up for Albanese, because those two looked the best. But Pache looked over his shoulder. Abrahamsen threaded the needle between Pache and Albanese. Bergadeau had to go the long way, all the way around Quentin Pache to get to the wheel. And I think Vincenzo Albanese, the glasses have gone off. Tried to stick them into his helmet once, failed, goes for it again, and this time gets it. As Bergadeau and Pache have joined forces and will try to chase down the Uno X Mobility man, who is very much on the move. Away goes Abrahamsen then, on his own, striking out at potential glory, but certainly increasing his chances in the overall combativity classification, which I think is what he's going to be looking at from now on. Tadej Pogacar, though, sat fourth wheel. Visma Lease-A-Bike and UAE Team Emirtes coming towards the front, dragging a couple of riders up there to help with the chase, but more importantly, keep Jonas Vingegaard and Tadej Pogacar out of any potential incidents that happen. Off the rear right now for Cofidis is Benjamin Thomas, as Israel Emirtes are pushing on for Jake Stewart, their sprinter, who is taking over from Pascal Ackermann. They're giving the Brit a go today. We'll see how that decision pans out. But in the battle between Jake Stewart and Pascal Ackermann, at the moment, it's all been for the 31-year-old German Ackermann, whose best result was 4th. But only one other top 10 at this Tour de France on stage 3, where he finished 8th into Dunkirk. His best result, though, 4th on stage 8. Behind Caden Groves, Wout van Aert and Jonathan Milan. Reeled in now are Pache and Bergerdo. Albanese will be next up, and it's Tim Wellens that has the Italian in his sights. Then after that, it is Jonas Abrahamsen, the familiar figure of the UnoX rider. But Tim Wellens makes the catch now. And 13 seconds is what the peloton has to close on Jonas Abrahamsen. They've got 8.3 kilometers to do it, so it doesn't have to be immediate. But they want to do it as soon as possible if you're the sprinters' teams. Wellens, though, followed by Sivakov, then Pogacar, third in the UAE Team Emirtes train, and the only rider in front of them is from Israel Emirtes. Who again are going for Jake Stewart, who hasn't had the opportunity to sprint, has been involved in a couple of breakaways, but was brought in as their secondary sprinter. Similar results to Pascal Ackermann across the year, but Ackermann has that higher ceiling from previous Grand Tours in the past, when he raced for the likes of Bora Hansgrohe. But Abrahamsen will just get his head down, have a specific wattage in mind, and just push that for as long as he possibly can. Joe Blackmore is the rider that's trying to bring this one back for Israel Emirtes, and Chris Nylands is looking to bridge the gap to the Brit, with a couple of riders on his wheel, Alexei Lutsenko, Guillaume Boivin there as well. Quentin Pache takes the combativity prize, as Enric Mas also being distanced from the peloton. Would be a troubling sign if he was in GC after that very good first week for the Spaniard, but could not continue that in the second week and was involved in the breakaway yesterday, of course. Eventually reeled in by Paripantra and Healy, who went and contested the stage win. But who will contest the stage win today? More and more riders being spat out of the rear. Jonas Vingegaard trying to stay in contention in the peloton. He's sat on the wheel of Tadej Pogacar in the yellow jersey. Instead, flicks to his teammate, and right now, at 6 kilometers to go, you're starting to see a change in command at the head of the peloton. GC teams are handing over to the sprinters teams, and Lidl-Trek and Alpecin-de-Koning were leading the way, as well as, of course, Israel Emirtes, who've been towards the front for a lot of this run-in, perhaps using the resources up a little bit too early, but going all in clearly for Jake Stewart. Jaco Alula sat right-hand side though. Luke Durbridge, Luca Mezgets and Dylan Groenewegen. Omar Reinders moving up as well for Jaco Alula, as Jonas Abrahamsen, arguably robbed of the combativity award based on this move, heads off alone at the front and is continuing to hold off this peloton It's only 7 seconds, and he's going to be caught. But entering the sprint zone, Abrahamsen is alone with 5 kilometers remaining and 8 seconds of an advantage on the peloton. So all of the GC riders will now be given the same time if there is a crash and they are in the peloton. And now it's the time for the sprinters teams to burn through their riders. Israel Premier Tech might have done that a little bit too early with the chase of Jonas Abrahamsen and the rest of his breakaway counterparts, but as of now, Tudor Pro Cycling are taking over at the front of the peloton. Israel Premier Tech as well through the middle of the road. Groupama FDJ there too. A little bit of unsignalled road furniture. Hopefully everybody got through that fine. Seemingly so, as Abrahamsen gets reeled in for good. And now, with no breakaway riders up the road, it is purely for the sprinters now. Alberto Dainese sat second wheel on Fabian Leinhard right now. That is not my offer, I can tell you that. But forward go Tudor Pro Cycling. Dainese gets on the radio because his lead-out rider has lost him. Alpecin-de-Koning sat towards the back. Tim Merlier as well. We haven't seen him at all in these last 10 or so kilometres. But he's going to be focusing on the wheel of Bert van Lerberger, who is going to do the job for him. Cofidis also moving up in the yellow sleeves. Making sure that their sprinter of choice, whether that be Reynard or Toos, is positioned as well as he could possibly be. Abrahamsen getting some plaudits from his teammates as Lotto tried to press on, but it's Bahrain Victorious at the moment who are leading the battle of the sprinters teams with 3 kilometres remaining. Kamil Gradek pulls over, and it's a chance for Jaco Alula to regain control of things. Next roundabout comes up. Soudal Quickstep have gone one side. Bahrain, Jaco, and most of the others have gone the opposite way. And Soudal Quickstep have lost out slightly because of it. Tim Merlier sat quite far back in the peloton, but he enjoys doing that. That's the way he sprints. He likes to leave it incredibly late. We talk about the likes of Alpecin-de-Koning leaving their lead out late on in the day. Merlier pretty much leaves it to the last possible moment. And most of the time, that works for him. One of the big two in sprinting. But with 2.3 kilometres to go, Luca Mezgec is trying to line this one out in the peloton. Elmar Reinders seemingly is still there for Dylan Groenewegen, although I can't see him now. But Jonathan Milan as well is towards the back. His Lidl-Trek team have expended so much in monitoring breakaways, bringing moves back, that they've left nothing for Jonathan Milan. This has echoes of the Mathieu van der Poel sprint stage, where teams were running out of riders so quickly that nobody had any riders left. And one of the teams that profited was Picnic Postenel. They liked these stages where everything is all over the road and chaos is ensuing. Of course, they've got Pavel Bittner and Tobias Lund Andersen to go for on today's stage. Whichever one they are not going for will be the lead-out man. But Picnic Postenel still with a complete team. And 1.3 kilometres to go, Milan gets moved up the peloton. Tim Merlier once again deciding to stick towards the back. Sat around 20th to 30th wheel, and big crash in the group. It was bound to happen, and just under the Flamme Rouge, it's a major incident, and Tim Merlier is caught behind it. That is the danger of sitting 20th to 30th wheel. Plenty of riders down, couple from Picnic Postenel, a couple from Israel Premier Tech, but it's Lotto and Brent Van Moer that are out the front at the moment. Astana sat second wheel. They look to be going for Fedorov today, the Kazakh national champion, but it's Brent Van Moer that's leading things out. 600 metres to go. Riders looking behind themselves, and suddenly teams will have to change their options. Clément Rousseau in there for Groupama FDJ. Does that mean that Paul Penaway's up there? But as of now, it's Astana that are dominating the lead out. Jordi Meus sat second wheel. wheel, and off goes the Astana rider. Meeus sat second, Milan third for the moment. Milan in third wheel, launches now. Arnaud Delis on the wheel of Jonathan Milan. He can't get out of the wheel at the moment, almost runs over the back of Milan. Meeus pushing hard, Milan on the right hand side, and nobody can challenge Jonathan Milan, who takes 50 sprint points and the stage win. The Italian wins on stage 17 of the Tour de France. And it is a big victory for the green jersey. But chaos happens. Jonas Vingegaard with his glasses in his mouth, checking if everybody's okay. Oscar Onley doesn't look fantastic. Tish Benoot joking around with Oliver Naesen. Pogacar looks okay. Felix Gall looks alright, having a joke with Oliver Naesen over the line. But again, everybody given the same time. And it looked like a big crash amongst those that were towards the front. Merlier stayed on the bike. It was only a couple of riders that went down, but everybody slamming on the brakes behind, and Tim Merlier misses out. Merlier misses out again though. Jonathan Milan is your winner though. And Biniam Girmay, one of the riders who was caught up in the crash, is sat with a couple of Intermarche Wanty riders, Jonas Ruch, Louis Barret there as well. So Biniam Girmay's down. Groupama FDJ rider on the deck as well. I wonder whether that's Penawet. Because Clement Rousseau was there or thereabouts towards the sprint. But once Milan launched, boxed Jordi Meeus in nicely, and Arnaud Delis almost ran over the rear wheel of Jonathan Milan. Meeus got back into the wheel of the Italian, but could not get around. And it was by half a wheel that Jonathan Milan took it. But it's a sprint where you had to stay away from the chaos. Jonathan Milan made his move at just the right time and held off Jordi Meeus, who takes second place. So Milan, your stage winner on stage 17. And that concludes the stream for today then. So that was stage 17, but what have we got coming up for tomorrow? I will be streaming for that as well. This was stage 17. Stage 18, slightly different, only slightly there. Stage ending on Col de la Loze, and 3 ore category climbs to be taken by the peloton. 171.5 kilometers total. And the Col du Landon, Col de Madeleine, and Col de la Loze await. The final climb in particular, 26.4 kilometers, 6.5% average gradient. Col de la Madeleine, almost 20 kilometers as well. The Col du Landon, over 20 kilometers at 5.1%, but with changeable gradients throughout. They're just showing a replay of the crash right now, going under the Flamme Rouge, and it is a narrowing and a bump of shoulders between a rider from Cofidis and a rider from Groupama FDJ. A Picnic Post and guy tried to thread the needle. And just general bumping and barging led to an incident occurring, and the worst rider was the man from Groupama FDJ who was positioned on the left. I think it was Bittner that was caught in a sandwich between one of the Cofidis riders and Paul Penawet. Biniam Girmay with bad damage to his right side. Lots of rips in the Intermarche Wanty jersey. We'll see if many of the sprinters continue tomorrow with this stage in prospect. But I will update you on that when we get some information for tomorrow's stage, where I'll be streaming it as always. So be there or be square tomorrow. Anyway, Milan wins the stage ahead of Jordi Meus, Tobias Lund Andersen in third. I will direct you guys to the results page, so you can update yourselves on the results. Arnaud Delis at fourth, Davide Ballerini in fifth position with Dainese sixth, and it wasn't Penaway that went down, so it was another Groupama FDJ rider. Perhaps then if it was the lead out guys that wasn't Russo, then it might be Gregoire on the ground. But Dainese in sixth, Penaway seventh, Fedorov eighth, Russo ninth, Stuyven in 10th. And I think it was Alexis Renard that's kind of caused that incident with Bittner threading the needle. He ends up finishing in 16th place for Cofidis. But multiple riders missed out on the sprint in the end to Valence. And that will end the stream for today. So up tomorrow, Col de la Loze, more entertaining stage, and I will have that from around lunchtime. There will be a bit of preamble before the stage, but I think I'm going to do the whole stage in its entirety, including the rollout. So make sure you're there for it tomorrow, where we will do this all over again. Anyway, I will go and get the word on the ground from today's stage, and I will see you tomorrow. Let me just check who's streaming to see if I can raid anybody, because I never do that, and I've just had that idea now. Is anybody on the Tour de France game that I can raid? Steroy is doing his subathon, but you know, he's got enough viewers as it is. So yeah, I don't really know if there is anybody to raid. Don't think so. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy yourselves, and see you tomorrow for the Col de la Loze.